After an opening day with only a few rainouts, we are now fully underway in the season, heading into the first Sunday. And we've got a full slate of games set up for today with, some teams playing their third game of the series, with other teams actually on their fourth game of the series, though that's only a few of them that are playing sort of extra games. I'm kind of surprised they even scheduled teams on Friday, because usually they leave that completely open just in case of rainouts.
I think I noticed that was mostly like domed stadiums, so they didn't have to worry about the weather at all either day.
And that might make sense where you're like, okay, you know what, we can sneak an extra game in here early in the season, and that can be very helpful for team schedules. And, they might not appreciate it now, but they might appreciate it a lot more in like July, September, July, August, when they're not having to play 29 games in 30 days or something.
So we're going to do this week in baseball. We'll do it every week. And so a baseball week is Monday to Sunday. Typically because you've got the last game of the series on Sunday. But when we decide to record these and whatnot, so there's going to be a lot of weeks where we're not going to have the Sunday games like today to talk about. In fact, there are all day games except for one, I guess, ESPN game, the Cardinals and Dodgers
tonight. It
always
has been for a long time now that you get all the day games and then you get the Sunday night sort of feature. Though generally that's much to everybody's chagrin, since everybody would much prefer their own local broadcasting team to the ESPN booth, it seems like.
And there'll be a couple of opening days tomorrow, so some teams are playing 3 games and then they're traveling home, the Yankees.
I don't think there's anybody that's on a 2-game road trip.
Oh, there are teams that are only 2 series road trips.
2 series road trips.
But the Guardians are playing their first 10 games on the road.
That's rough.
It is rough.
And it's weird that you'd have like an opening day then like in the middle of April.
I don't know if they're doing work at Progressive Field or what the reasoning for that was, but they have, I guess, done it before, and other teams have also done a sort of a long road trip to open the season before. But before the season started, there are a few things that happened and that we thought we would just kind of talk about that are going to be related to baseball this year. You saw the Seoul series between the Dodgers, obviously, and the Padres, but Fox Sports is going to do the London series in June.
Right, that's going to be the Mets and the Phillies.
There's going to not be a Field of Dreams game this year because they're still working on the field out there in Iowa, but there will be a special game at Rickwood Field in Alabama. And that stadium apparently is a renowned stadium in terms of the way that it looks like it did when it was being used for everyday baseball.
I think that's cool, and I think that's probably a lot less stress on the teams just to play one game in a different state in a different stadium than to go all the way over to London and play a full series over there. Especially because no matter what the facilities are going to be like, they're just not good. It's going to be the first time they're doing something like this.
Yeah,
they're going to not be what they're used to.
Right, and I think I thought there was going to be a series in Mexico this year. I'm pretty sure as well. I can't remember where.
There will be a game on April 28th between the Astros and Rockies in Mexico City. So if you're betting on that game, bet the over because they're going to score a ton of runs.
Remember that last year? That was a crazy game.
They scored it was like a 15-10 or something.
Yeah.
Everybody was hitting home runs.
It was a homer
fest. Where the
fest.
stadium is, the ball flies out of there.
So Apple TV will have some Friday night baseball doubleheaders. So when you're looking for your team on Friday night on your normal outlet and you can't find it for whatever reason, that's because it's in Apple TV.
They're on Apple TV.
Exactly. I don't know if Amazon has any baseball games this year. They did that with football. And TBS will have its few games as it does every year. Couple of deals before the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the big one, obviously, was Jordan Montgomery signing with the Diamondbacks. He's only signing a 1-year deal, and he's not subject to the qualifying offer.
Well,
because of when
he is, isn't he?
No, because he was on the roster after the season started.
I thought he signed before the season started.
No, not because of the way Boras did it. So that's the big thing, and that's why it works out for him is that he's going to be able to walk this. So that's why he didn't get as much money, because any team that was going to be signing him
some compensation
knew they weren't going to get the compensation that they would have been able to normally get. So it's interesting because it's a kind of a good situation for both the Diamondbacks and Montgomery in that they're a team that needs a guy to be big this year, and he has to be a mercenary arm that goes out and pitches big this year. Otherwise, he's not going to make the money. He's really betting on himself this season to make a ton of money.
I love that the Diamondbacks did this, and I think we both had them, second or a third this year.
That makes them a much scarier. That makes them, a Dodger injury in the wrong place or to the wrong person away from being a threat for that division, because that starting rotation is very good now
and very, very, very deep.
But the Dodgers didn't sit pat either. either. They signed Will Smith to a 10-year, $140 million extension, which for your catcher is actually a pretty good extension when you think about the money, depending on how you've spaced it out.
I guess he'll be 39 at the end of that contract. So
right. But
I'm not sure how much catching he'll do in the last couple of years.
Right, but if you front loaded the contract to be paying him more money right now when he's actually worth it, then cutting him or getting rid of him in the back years of the deal when he's not making that much money doesn't hurt.
Or
you
he could DH and just hit if he keeps hitting like he does.
I mean, I can't imagine Will Smith is thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm for sure playing out that all 10 years of this contract."
Only Yadier Molina does stuff like that.
Right, exactly. I mean, when you're a player that the chance of me playing all 10 years of this contract are unlikely, but the fact that I have it out there puts me in a good position because then even if they do end up wanting to cut me, I still get paid as if I was working for those years. So it works out.
Yeah, it definitely does. And a couple of injuries right away. I think you saw Royce Lewis hit the home run in the third inning of his first
and then
game.
Comes up
with a single. He comes up lame with a quad, and now it
looks like a hammy. I thought maybe
I think it's a quad.
Well, he came around. He was coming into third, and he came up a little gimpy. So we don't I don't think we still don't.
Now I just heard this morning it could be like 2 months.
Oh yeah, and that's the problem with leg injuries like that, especially like to the quad or to the hamstring.
This guy I think he batted .313 for his career with like 18 home runs in like 80 games because he can never stay on the field.
Right, and then of course the Cubs had to see Justin Steele get injured.
Yeah, that's a big blow.
That's
for
a
them.
big blow for that team because they really needed him to be.
Although he may not be out that long.
But even then, like, how long is too long for them?
Well, for a team that I think they have to get performances from other guys, and the start they got from Kyle Hendricks yesterday would not hearten them to think that he's going to be able to make it up.
I think you're worried because the Cardinals don't look quite as hapless in the first two games as we had them pegged against the Dodgers, even though I'm for sure that ESPN would have been loved to waxing poetic about Shohei Ohtani's big hit last night. But he comes up bases loaded in the ninth inning, and he can't get the job done for the Dodgers, and they lose to the Cardinals on Saturday.
He's a bum.
He's a bum. Nah. I think that right now, I think something you said yesterday to me kind of really stands out. Last year, through April and into May, the Pirates were 20-8. So just remember that, everybody, through the first week or two of the season. It can start off looking one way for a team and end up a completely different way. Now, I think there's a big difference between the end of April and the end of May.
Oh, yeah.
If you get to
this is the end of March.
Right, this is the end of March. But what I'm saying is that you don't need to panic after the first month of the season. But by the time you get to the end of the second month, unless you're going to do something unusual like the Braves, where you play at like an 850 clip for the second half, it's very difficult to make up the amount of ground that you might need to, especially if you're in a good division like the AL East, like the AL West, like the NL West. There's a lot of good divisions in baseball. And even then, it can be something like, well, you're in the NL Central, you're the Cubs. You stumble out of the gate and you have a terrible April, and now you just have to try and play catch up with whoever is leading the division.
It certainly beats
year.
Starting out, poorly. That's for sure. And I think the Astros, who started out 0-3 against the Yankees so far, I don't think they're nervous, but I sure think they'd like to win the game tonight. You
don't want to get swept in the opening
in your own ballpark. That's not a good omen for the season.
Yeah. It casts a pall over everything.
But the Pirates are 3-0, and they got a start from Jared Jones yesterday, in which he pitched 5 2/3 and struck out 10. He gave up 3 earned runs, and so that's from the standpoint of a great performance. No, you like the strikeouts.
You're excited. It's a rookie. It's his first start in the major league level, and he goes out and he's clearly got exciting stuff because he's striking out 10 guys in his first start.
What I really like, and I'm looking around the league at pitching, and here in New York, we haven't seen very much good pitching the first couple of days from our own team. But the pitchers that have pitched, for the most part, starters, they go 5 innings, right? A couple of them maybe go 6, and that's not to be that surprising. Even 4 for a lot of starters.
Right, but even, especially at this time of year, that's pretty normal. But what I'm seeing is that, one, all of the pitchers seem much more comfortable with the pitch clock. You're not even seeing it mentioned at this point. So I'm thinking at this point the guys are used to it now. So I don't think the fact that they shaved 2 seconds off is having any effect on these guys.
No, I don't think so either. And what I do see happening is that so if the pitcher goes and they give you the 4 or 5 innings and no runs or 1 run, and then the bullpen and they got a series of guys that come out of the bullpen. The problem is one of those guys I'm noticing is going to give it up.
Right.
And so the games are being lost because Joely Rodriguez came in and blew it, and and he was the third reliever.
And this is a bit of the time of the year where you're going to cycle through a lot of bullpen guys and kind of figure out, okay, who are my reliable guys that are getting guys out? Because sometimes that can change on like a year-by-year basis. Some years, some guys are Ottavino. 2022, he was unhittable out of the pen. 2023, everything hit everything. Everybody hit everything off of him, and it didn't matter. Like, he was just, couldn't get anybody out. So that could change. He might be unbelievable in 2024. We don't know, but we're going to be seeing that. So you're also going to see guys that you might only see right now for these first couple weeks of the season. Then they're going to get shipped down to the minor leagues, and we'll never see him again.
And the Reds, who started for the moment, they're 1-2 or something like that. They are 1-2. They got to start Hunter Green, who we've said is a very important pitcher for them today this year. 4 2/3, 2 earned runs, 5 hits, 7 strikeouts. Okay, and they're in the game. Except that as the game progresses, all of a sudden they get to Lucas Sims
and
then Alexis Diaz, who was one of their best relief players, and he gives it up, and they end up losing 7-6 to the Nationals because their bullpen can't stop anybody in that game. So that's what happens in a lot of these early season starts where you can't get the pitcher deep enough into the game, and now you got guys pitching more innings than you probably would want them to.
Because I think right now major league teams are thinking if we can get our starter to go 6 innings, that's a great start.
Well, at this time of year, you might not even have a right to say 6.
Yeah, right. But I think that's probably the target I'm saying for this season. 6 innings. If you get a 6-inning start out of your starting pitcher, that twice through the lineup, maybe 3 times, depending on where they finish up.
3 times is the real watershed.
Right. Because what we're seeing now is guys are so good at adjusting from at bat to at bat and picking up the differences that you can't only have the same guy facing them more than a couple times. You can't even have the same type of guy facing them.
Right, as we learned as Met fans last year.
So we're already seeing that. And, you're seeing some early injuries as well that are affecting teams that are playing well, where DJ LeMahieu breaks his foot, and he's going to be missing a bunch of time now because at least. And
they had hadn't they signed John Birdie before that? Or were they signed? I thought it was before.
I thought they traded for him.
Or they brought in Birdie. They traded for Birdie. They did trade for him, you're right. So, and of course, he's going to step right in and play. So good on them for having a guy who can
immediately fill in.
And the Yankees have gotten good pitching, I think, so far. Stroman threw a great game yesterday, 6 innings of no runs.
And if you're the Yankees, you love being able to hang an early series on the Astros before they've sort of figured it out. Though I think the thing you wonder is this finally the year where it just doesn't go right for them? They've had so many good years in a row that maybe they just have a down year for whatever reason.
When I look at this stuff, and I don't personally believe that'll be the case with the Astros this year, but these games count as much as the games count, in September.
And
so
as much as we said
you can look back on that series, the Astros, if in fact they're in a dogfight with Texas and Seattle to win the division, and they're 2 games ahead, thinking, man, we shouldn't have lost those first 4 to the Yankees at home.
Right, exactly. Man, if we'd only split instead of getting swept, how different our season would look right now.
So Mookie Betts is doing MVP. I'm glad I picked him as the MVP. He's the early leader in the MVP
hitting 4
race.
home runs in your first 5 games is certainly going to put you out there. You're leading the league and all that.
I love doing is I went into MLB.com or ESPN. You can look at the league leaders. And the league leaders after 5 games.
After 3 games.
So Jared Kelenic is batting .667 so far this year.
5 games is disingenuous because there's only 2
teams that did that, right? So the other guys are 3 or maybe 4 games or whatnot.
Some of them are only 2.
But a guy like I forgot. David Fry is never heard of him. He is on the league leaders right now for his whole life. Now, if nothing ever else goes right for him, he's going to save that shot that day when I was with all those guys.
I think you're going to see that for the first couple of the weeks of the season. You see wild guys in the home run lead or the RBI lead, and then it usually shakes out by about mid-May, the expected people who, at least it might not be Acuna number 1, but he's going to be somewhere in there. Same with Freddie Freeman. You don't know which which one of the expected superstars is going to lead. But unless somebody out of nowhere suddenly has a power season, it's usually not too shocking.
Speaking of power, Matt Olson of the Braves has gotten off to another great start, as have the Braves. And I was interesting in the game Saturday. Max Fried kind of spit the bit, didn't get out of the first inning, right? So he's pitching against Aaron Nola, the guy who didn't get the opening day start.
Right.
And Aaron Nola had a day like Luis Severino did yesterday,
which
is to say they knocked him all over the yard. He gave up 12 hits and just got absolutely smoked.
That had to be just...
And that happens right early in the season, right? This is not in the Nola's finished, he's done.
I need to see 5 starts from Nola.
Yeah, and guys can have it in a first start, and all of a sudden, this is great, and that's just a good start. And the guy cannot have it, and it's just a bad start.
It usually takes. Usually, you got to give the guys at least a little bit to work into the season because it just takes pitchers, time now because of how they prepare their arm, and you're not going to be going all out in these first few games like you're going to be pitching in June.
So Tyler O'Neill, a newest Red Sox, right?
Yes.
Continued his streak. He hit a home run on opening day for the 5th consecutive year, and that is an MLB record.
Well, I'm not surprised because that's just hard to do. Just every year on opening day, knock one out of the park. There's not a lot of guys that have done that.
Yeah, my trivia question, which I must have asked it the wrong way this week because I basically said 3 guys have hit 8 home runs total for opening day over their careers. And who are they? And one of them was Ken Griffey Jr. I had a picture of Griffey, and then I said, well, they all played for the same team at one point, and they totaled 1,678 home runs for their career.
So I think the problem is when you say played for the same team, that makes everybody think they're contemporaries.
Or they played at the same time. I think you're right. I might have misled. So the team was the Reds. Frank Robinson was the second guy, and Adam Dunn, not surprisingly, if you know the Reds.
Not surprisingly if you know the Reds and you know him as a power hitter.
462 career home runs. That's how you get to 1,678 home runs between 3 guys.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, I thought that was a good one, and Tyler O'Neill's got his name in that record book as well. Mm-hmm. And the Diamondbacks, I thought was interesting that they put up a 14 spot in the 3rd inning in the first game of the season
without hitting a home run.
Without hitting a home run. I mean, that's a lot of
that's just a lot of base to station to station. Yeah,
right, exactly. So let's we're Mets fans, obviously, and I went to opening day, the very frigidly cold, windy, at least where I was sitting. You had to sit in right field where it was sunny, and those people looked like they had a much better time than I did.
Freezing in the cold.
Right, the Mets only got 1 hit, but obviously something happened in the game with Rhys Hoskins and Jeff McNeil, who have a history
now.
Well, they had a history before, I guess.
Certainly
now that's like that. And so yesterday,
Rhys Hoskins won.
Right. He took it out on the Mets by getting on base 4 times, a
home run, 4 RBIs,
and whatnot. But on his 2-run home run, after what happened in the first game is. No, that was yesterday.
Well, first game there was a late slide.
Right.
Second game, after he hits a home run on yesterday on Saturday, he comes around second and stares down McNeil
and holds up 2 fingers.
Right, and then starts yapping at him.
Right, and then he was in the dugout rubbing his eyes at McNeil, saying, "You're being a crybaby."
So then they throw.
Yohan Ramirez, the newest Met, comes in,
throws behind him,
literally behind him.
And then he gets tossed.
And he's suspended now.
Right, and he's suspended, though I don't think the Mets are too upset. They're not losing any sleep about him.
Well, I think you play a man short in the bullpen when you got a guy suspended like that, so it does hurt.
It does hurt, but I think that the only way for the Mets to really win anything here is to actually go out today and win the ball game. Because if they don't win today, then Hoskins is the one that, you can't say anything. He won.
So Ron Darling on the broadcast and a lot of Mets fans felt that response was, not the right response, and if it was the wrong time, the response, they should have done that early in the game if you want to do that, but throwing at guys, and I keep saying this to you and all that, so he did not throw at him. He threw behind him. Okay, the safest thing you can do
is throw
the ball behind the guy because you're not trying to hit him, but you are sending a message by throwing it there, and that's why he got suspended, because anybody that says that's not intentional is crazy.
I think for me, as somebody that's talking about how, player safety, right? And talking about how,
we talk about that all the time.
Right. I can't be somebody that's advocating that, intentionally throwing at guys is a bad, a bad thing. It's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. But then also, we should retaliate.
But that retaliation is the only thing that says in the pitch, it slipped.
Well, I think it's also the same thing. I can't be in favor of Rhys Hoskins' hard slide into second base, even though
it's legal.
A legal slide.
It was dirty.
Dirty. legal? I don't know, but I'm going to say I'm not any more in favor of that than I am in throwing at guys, because both of them result in the same thing, which is potentially injuring somebody, which I guess my thing with that is nobody wants that. And so if that's a potential outcome of the action, what is the purpose of the message then? Because it almost feels like that's sort of what we want to happen, just so that we can then all be like, oh, well, no, we never want this to happen. But like, yeah, if we did end up injuring the guy, it's not the worst thing.
Well, I'll go back to when you're throwing behind somebody you're not trying to injure him. You're just trying to let him know that you could injure him.
I think the MLB, if anything, should be less punishing on throwing behind people, because you would rather encourage that behavior
100% agree.
than throwing at guys.
But and my problem with Rhys Hoskins is not that it was an illegal play, because it wasn't. It was a legal play. But when he slid through the base, he slid right into McNeil's leg, and that seemed to be done with some intent to injure. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't know what's in the guy's head and predict it, but it sure looked like it, and that could have been bad.
Here's
that
what
really
I'm
could have been bad.
If we're going to say that we don't want the second baseman or the shortstop standing over second base because it obstructs the runner, and when they're sliding into second head first, that leads to a lot of injuries because they're sliding into their legs. So we've changed that rule by calling it obstruction now. But if we're going to say that, then shouldn't the runner being able to slide over the base, then reach back behind him and grab the base as he passes by it so he can take the guy out? Isn't that equally as bad? Because that's clearly not a baseball play at that point.
Right, but it's legal.
It's legal,
yeah. And I think that was my beef there. But your point is well taken. The only way to quiet a guy down like that who is yapping at you and making you feel like that is to go out and beat the team.
Right, you got to go out today and win, and you don't want to start the season 0-3.
So I thought we would do this year as well, and
take a look at where people are heading this week.
Yeah. Let's what are the series coming up this week, so you can know where everybody's going to be. And the Rockies are still on the road, and they have not gotten off to a good start to nobody's surprise. But they will end up in Tampa playing their home opener on Friday in Denver. So the Angels will start at Miami. And the week, and they will not go home for their home opener until they meet the Red Sox in Anaheim on Friday.
Right, and whereas Washington, who I think has been on the road for their first couple games in Cincinnati, is now going to come home and play both Pittsburgh and Philadelphia there, while Detroit is coming here in town to play the Mets in their next series.
So the Yankees, and I guess I thought the Yankees were on the road. They're playing at home tomorrow, but it looks, to hear what I'm saying, that they are in Arizona, and that would make sense going from Houston to Arizona.
It would be weird for them to come home.
And then they have their home opener against the Blue Jays later this week on Friday. So hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer than what the Mets saw on Friday. The Twins are in Milwaukee on the road, and they will be coming home for their opener against the Cleveland Guardians. They'll play Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to be excited because we're going to start to see some divisional matchups. You're going to see the Brewers, the Twins getting some games against the Guardians. You're starting to see some, early season matchups.
And the Guardians off to a good start, right? And the Twins too, so that's interesting.
Right, the Giants are going to be playing both the Dodgers and the Padres this week, so that's a big week in the NL West. So I think it's going to be interesting because then you've got some teams like the Cubs who are going to be home for both of their series because they're already playing the Rockies, like we said, but then they're also going to be playing the Dodgers at home. So that's going to be a nice little, break for them. Whereas the Mets are finally going to be heading on the road for their first series when they head over to Cincinnati later next week.
I think it's interesting that the Mets are home for the Tigers because it's a team you just don't. The Mets and Tigers hardly ever seem to play.
So for them to play, it makes that
early in the season is interesting.
It's going to make that later series in the season feel very strange and disjointed because all of a sudden, in the middle of nowhere, this Tiger series is going to pop up in August.
And after his opening day start, I'm a little nervous that the Mets might get schooled
by Tarek Skubal
this week. So
I'm excited for the Rangers in Houston later next week. That should be a big series.
And the Giants, you said, are on the road again. They're going to play in LA, and then they come home for the Padres. So they're doing it all within the division this week, I think, which is really interesting to have all those divisional games first week of the year. Houston will stay at home after hopefully winning the game today against the Yankees and entertain the Toronto Blue Jays before they travel on the road.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be a really exciting, now as we're kind of get into the season proper here, I'm excited to start to see sort of the storylines develop. We're going to start seeing teams really shake out into the first early pole positions. who's getting off to hot starts, what pitcher.
The Orioles look good, and I think it's interesting because they're going to be still home for the Kansas City Royals. So that's a nice way to start your season before you go to Pittsburgh. So it's conceivable the Orioles could get off to one heck of a start here with that early schedule, considering they've already won their first couple.
Right. And I think another team that weirdly you have to keep an eye on, just because they're sort of a salve potentially for teams that are struggling. Well, two teams really are the Rockies and the Athletics.
Yes.
Who those teams play in a given week can be very meaningful, because a team that's struggling can all of a sudden, if you somehow get lucky and get those teams back to back or whatever, that can be a whole week where all of a sudden you're feeling real different about your team if you go 6-0 and you're like, oh yeah, we're back in this.
Yeah, the Tigers, who will entertain those A's, they will be a home team for the A's later this week. The Tigers have a chance to get up I hate this fact that they're coming in New York, because they've already gotten good starts from Casey Mize.
Right, they could get off to a really hot start this year. And so, but you're hoping not to get off to that brutal April, May that, certain teams get off of, because even if you play well out the rest of the year, it just casts this cloud over you. We all remember that Cincinnati Reds team that started like 3-22. They ended up with like 70-something wins, which means they played at a pretty good clip the rest of the way.
But they could never recover from that.
Right.
Well, I don't think anybody can recover from that kind of a thing. So, yeah, I think what's most telling, as I started talking about, is just that the pitchers are just not able to go deep, and so games are uncertain. I don't think you feel comfortable, even if your starting pitcher has had a good game through 4 or 5 innings, knowing what you're going to get out of your bullpen at this point in the season.
No, you're probably going to need to go through the rotation a couple more times before you're going to start seeing guys stretch out, and we start having some 6-7 inning starts, maybe having a guy go for a complete game or something on a night where he's hot.
Yeah.
But those are rare now, because those really come down to some guy having an unbelievable night more than anything else.
And, we had, this was the 6th time the Mets opened in March. And actually, they have a losing record in March on opening day, since they're so good, so they should never open in March again, apparently. But I think weather also, and certainly in the first month of the season, which hasn't even started yet in terms of April, which is really what we call the first month, that affects the way that games are played, the way managers manage. Right, fans are cold.
Right.
So I think it has more of an impact before the season kind of settles in.
Right, and ultimately, as a Met fan, yeah, they might have lost opening day, which for people that do not realize is unusual for New York Mets. They are the best opening team by a wild margin. But, as a Met fan takes solace, they did lose opening day in 69 and 86, so who knows, maybe 2024 is off to a good start.
Not the first two.